Hello? Hi. As I understand it, I believe we're live. I try to put myself a little bit closer to the mic so that I'm picked up well. I think it's working. It also seems a little loud to me. Only a little bit. But hello. It's Wednesday. Wednesday, June 9th of 2021. And we're back again for another week of Matt Opens Toys. I still have toys to open. So I'm still going to stream it. Yeah. I think the last time I streamed was it was me working on that Daily Bugle build, the Lego set. Again, I didn't get too much done. I only did the one bag. I was extremely tired that day. I am not extremely tired today. I'm just the regular amount of tired that I go through in my adult life. But yeah, time for a regular stream. Matt Opens Toys. I'm Matt, and I open toys. Toys that I have usually sitting around for a little bit. The whole premise, I suppose, is that I'm giving myself more space or room, and that's, I guess that might be true to a certain extent, except I continue to buy toys incessantly. So it's really a never-ending cycle. But yes, today, as you can see, here in center frame, we're gonna be opening some toys. This is not a sponsored stream, sadly. None of them ever are. But coincidentally, I'm going to be opening some toys from Hasbro's Jaye Joe classified line. I say coincidentally enough because I guess right now it's a promotional period for G.I. Joe in particular. Hasbro's calling it Yo-Jo June. That did not play any part into my decision to open some G.I. Joes tonight. As I said, not sponsored. Hasbro, sure. Hey, I'm open to it. I will accept your money gladly. I will only say positive things about your product if I'm sponsored. But yes, so it's a regular Wednesday stream. I think I started pretty much on time. I sat down and turned my computer on, not at 8:30, which is a good tactic, generally speaking, if you're looking to start streaming at 8:30. So I think I'm pretty much on the money in terms of when I said I was going to start. But yeah, so we're going to be opening a few toys, some of which I've had for a little while, not too long. And then a couple that I just got in, I think, towards the end of last week. I do have another from this line on the way, and I actually have two that I will not be opening on tonight's stream because they're kind of like special edition ones. One of them is the Supreme Cobra Commander. It was like a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, and of course there was no San Diego Comic-Con last year due to the pandemic. And so I think Hasbro had ended up instead selling it through their website, so I picked that up when I picked up a couple other San Diego Comic-Con exclusives. So I have that, and then I have the Profit Director, Destro, which I guess is a reference to Pimp Daddy Destro, which was a toy that they made that was extremely rare and limited back when they thought the toy line was dead in the 80s, and then it wasn't dead. I don't know why I know any of that. But yeah, so I'm not going to be opening those. I'm just going to be opening a couple from the main line of the of G.I. Joe Classified, although some of them, I believe 3 of them, maybe, are... no, I'm sorry, 2 of them are part of these Target exclusives, somewhat hard to get, although they are pending a reissue. Target exclusive Cobra Island subline, which was kind of unpopular at the get-go because it had a lot of anticipated characters by fans, but it was a Target exclusive. I've talked about this on my stream before. As far as them being somewhat hard to get, I think, again, Hasbro has gone on the record that they're going to be working on trying to make it a little bit easier to get those without having to pay an extreme aftermarket markup, which is great. I'm happy if more people can get these toys for a not ridiculous sum of money. But yeah, so we're going to be looking at some G.I. Joe today. Let's look at our first one, and I'll just continue rambling, right? So this, as you can see from the side panel illustration, is the Cobra Island Firefly toy. So G.I. Joe is an interesting franchise for me as far as like any sort of history with it. I would say that my first exposure, at least the main thing that I can remember when I was a kid, I definitely had little G.I. Joe action figures, the little 3 3/4 inch ones, held together with a little rubber band. But I would say the thing I remember most clearly is we had these NES games. There was an G.I. Joe NES game that I played quite a bit. And then there was also a sequel, G.I. Joe, I believe it was called Rise of Atlantis, maybe, G.I. Joe 2, also for the NES. They used a lot of the same art assets, or definitely like the main sprites of the main characters. But they had kind of like a different play style. They were both technically side scrollers, but the other one kind of had this, it was one of the first games that I remember playing that had sort of a hub overworld feature, so you could revisit places that you had been to earlier in the game, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I played those games, but so I don't have like a big history with G.I. Joe as far as like the comics. I don't even have that much of a history with the cartoon, at least to my recollection. I guess I would have been pretty young when that was very popular. But I do have a fair amount of the toys. I wouldn't say that it was the toy line that I was most heavily invested in as a as a younger kid. But I had a few of them. I definitely, I had a nice little collection. It's just maybe not the sort of thing that I collected quite as fervently as other things. And maybe it's because I didn't really ever watch the cartoon or read any sort of comics. I know that there's a big contingent of fans who had come to G.I. Joe that way. But that wasn't my personal experience. And I find G.I. Joe as a concept kind of weird now. I do like the toys. Besides the ones that I had when I was very young, I had also kind of got back into the line because right around the subline of the small G.I. Joes, it was called Pursuit of Cobra. And I got pretty big into it because they were pretty high quality little action figures. Yeah, I think like I said, I don't have like a narrative attachment really to most of the G.I. Joe characters. I would say my understanding and knowledge of them is fairly limited. I just really like those video games, and I had a ton of the toys, but I never read the comics. Yeah, I'm just repeating myself, aren't I? Well, that's bound to happen. That's bound to happen, folks. So the first one that we're opening is the G.I. Joe. Again, this is called the Classified series. This is a 6-inch line of G.I. Joes, as I've made reference to. There's a still somewhat popular 3 3/4 inch G.I. Joe line that may be more familiar to some people, and of course, the original G.I. Joe was the 12-inch dressable, like accessory doll. I hesitate to say doll. I don't know if I'll be offending anybody that's like a big original G.I. Joe fan, but yeah. a 12-inch action figure, that is to say. But Hasbro debuted this line, this 6-inch line, which was a fairly new scale for G.I. Joes. They debuted it maybe about like a year or 2 years ago, more or less. Pretty much like right before the pandemic. Because I do remember when the line was kind of first rolling out, scrambling around to get those initial releases. I thought of myself as a pretty casual fan, and at this point I would say I've bought probably every mainline release of a G.I. Joe for this the 6-inch classified series. So I mean, heck, I don't know. I guess I must be a pretty big fan, honestly. And again, it's kind of really mostly for them as toys. I think I've kind of waxed poetic on here before about how I really kind of appreciate them also as sort of just being kind of little nice art objects, well sculpted, articulated, interactive things that are, for me, also a nice nostalgic callback to my youth. But yeah, I mean, these are nice toys as well. I've said in the past that this is not really this really isn't intended to be a review stream or anything like that. I'm just opening toys and then kind of sharing my personal history and thoughts maybe on the toy itself. But it's not really meant to be a review stream because it would be very uncomprehensive as far as an actual review were to go. I might fiddle around with this camera a little bit. I'm not loving the way that everything is framed up. Maybe I need a little bit of a downward tilt. Give me just a second while I mess with this camera that I'm always complaining about. Yeah, I'd say that's a reasonable improvement to the way it looked before. So like I said, I mean, I didn't like super know all of these characters. I would say even a lot of the toys that I did have when I was younger, I might not have known really the different characters' names to a certain extent. There's this one guy that I remember distinctly having as a younger child playing with my G.I. Joe action figures. There was this one guy, I know he's part of the Tiger Force, but he wears like kind of orange tiger print pants, and he wears like a bandana across his eyes. I guess he's maybe supposed to be blind, but I don't remember his name. I remember playing with him a lot. I think I had a sci-fi. Maybe. There was this guy that wore like gold armor and had kind of like a RoboCop-ish gold helmet. So yeah, I mean, my experience, my relationship to G.I. Joe was largely just like playing with him as a kid. And I kind of touched upon like I had sort of gotten a little bit back into G.I. Joes, enough to have a decent collection, I suppose, still sitting here in my garage right now, of basically the resurgence or more modern 3 3/4 inch line, which I think may have been an anniversary based line, and then they had what was called Pursuit of Cobra. I remember really liking the Pursuit of Cobra toys. I think that may have been between the two live action films as far as when that was really out and on the shelves and whatnot. But yeah, I got a fair amount of those. I mean, I did. I picked up a lot, and they're just impressive like from a sculpt and an accessory standpoint, they had really made like some crazy upgrades and improvements from the older toy lines. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's definitely like, I enjoyed those toys. But I mean, it's just, it was kind of a market improvement, if you were to ask me. Again, to the point that I collected a lot of those, really just based off of the strength of them as a toy, a little toy object. So this is Firefly. He is a Cobra agent. He featured, I believe, in the second live-action G.I. Joe film, which is another one of my bizarrely limited points of reference for G.I. Joe. He was played, I believe, by Ray Fisher in that movie. But he's like, I guess a lot of the Cobra guys, except for like the people in charge, are always kind of implied to be more like mercenaries or guns for hire, or just, people that Cobra is somehow able to finance. But he's like a explosion demolition kind of guy. I remember him somewhat because, again, I believe he was maybe a boss in the NES games, 1 or 2. I mean, they would tell you. I definitely remember the name Firefly, but I think he was like in a jetpack and just kind of a really annoying boss to have to beat. But yeah, that was one of my big exposures to G.I. Joe, I would say, that video game. This figure himself is, again, just nice. I think this line overall is just kind of really impressive. Overall, with regards to using a lot of unique sculpts and putting a lot of detail in. They look nice. Like I said, I've gotten, I think, pretty much everyone that's come out, being a fairly casual G.I. Joe fan and somebody with weird points of reference for the IP itself. It's like, I don't know if I'm just like easy to impress or what. But I think they've just done a great job. I mean, I decided to buy the line because I wanted a Snake Eyes, and then it just kind of like, it snowballed from there. So like I said, I'm a real kind of like casual fan. I think Snake Eyes is a lot of people that have a somewhat superficial relationship with the franchise. I think Snake Eyes is an easy favorite for a lot of people. Let's talk about this toy a little bit. So like I said, Firefly, he's like a demolitions expert, and he deals with explosives and whatnot. You can see he comes with like this weird little drone, kind of Raven drone, probably drops bombs kind of deal. Kind of looks like the Ed 2000 or whatever from I guess that second RoboCop movie that I don't even know if I saw, but I definitely had toys from. He comes with, as you would expect, a bundle of dynamite, pretty fun little accessory there, and then this fairly large backpack that has, I believe, a landmine tucked into the back in addition to his gun. Yeah, I mean, I've had some discussions with some friends of mine with regards to G.I. Joe in general, because like, it's a funny thing because the property itself is like necessarily cartoony. Like it's a really over the top thing, basically since the 80s cartoon. Like it just paints a picture of such ridiculous over the top evil terrorism that you buy into the idea of like this very bizarre US military power that's not directly related to the armed forces that I can tell, even though they use like all of the, all the language of it and whatnot. But they all have like weird little gimmicks that make them distinct from one another. but it's weird. It feels weird because it feels a little like military propaganda. And as somebody that lives in the United States, like there's like a palpable feeling of just like sort of American jingoism that I would say goes along with it. But the property is kind of so inherently dumb and over the top that you can't really consider those themes in a serious way, which is good. I mean, I think that it doesn't truly glamorize anything in real life. I mean, I think if you like G.I. Joes, you might be a little bit more likely to be into guns, and maybe vice versa, because a lot of these toys were packaged with like real guns. And so I don't know. It's like I said, it's a strange thing for me to consider too heavily, but thankfully the property itself doesn't do that either. So like like I said, my experience is video games and then like the live action movies, which again are just so absurd. Like they're wonderful. Me and my wife, I think both are big fans of both of those ridiculous G.I. Joe movies. But yes, I digress. So Firefly, I mean, again, a nice figure, plenty of detail, lots of really nice. Let me do a nice little zoom in on him here. Just a crazy amount of sculpted details, nice camo print. He's wearing, I guess, like a pretty heavily armored body suit, which makes sense because he deals with like explosives and demolition items. So makes sense for the character. This one seems pretty closely inspired by a 3 3/4 inch Firefly that I had, except that one had a like kind of a crazy helmet that also kind of covered the face and gave him sort of a sharp, almost mecha looking angular look for the helmet. Yeah. But Firefly, I mean, I like that toy. Like I said, I vaguely recall him from the video game as a boss. But so yeah, I've been picking it up. This is another Cobra Island exclusive. So the first two are those Firefly, and this is a Cobra Viper. If anybody that's a big G.I. Joe fan is watching this after the fact, this is my second Cobra Viper, so I think that that's a very reasonable amount. I'm not hoarding it. I've just luckily stumbled into it once on the shelf, and then I got very lucky as far as ordering this guy off of Hasbro's website. Well, it was very briefly listed. But like I said, this is my second one of this figure. It's a big thing with G.I. Joe is they have... oh, that's weird. Huh. I wonder if the hips are in backwards or something. No, I guess not. I guess this is intentional. Or at least it appears that way because my other Cobra Viper is set up in the same way. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. If you look, he's got red on his outside hips and on the inside of his thighs. And then the way that it's sculpted kind of makes it seem like that should be a continuous thing. Like all the way down the hips, all the way down the thighs. But maybe not. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it looks fine either way. But yeah, so a Cobra Viper, which is what this guy is. He's kind of got a cool helmet, similar to the way that Cobra Commander is depicted a lot of the time. I didn't even notice. There's kind of like a snake decal aesthetic to that helmet. It makes sense. They're Cobra. They have a lot of snake theming. But this is what are typically referred to as army builders or troop builders. I think one of the things that made the 3 3/4 inch G.I. Joe line very popular with certain collectors is the fact that you could, like, 3 3/4 inches is pretty small overall. For example, the new Lilymon that my wife and I picked up, that is blurrily in the background of this shot, is maybe about only a touch shorter than what a G.I. Joe, an original G.I. Joe would be. I guess maybe she's about like a head shorter or so. Because, I guess a G.I. Joe is normally going to be about like right there. More or less. But, again, I think one of the appeal elements is that there were these army builders, and they're pretty small. I would say the 3 3/4 inch G.I. Joe line was also very reasonably priced by modern standards. I mean, maybe it was just like... No, I imagine it probably stayed reasonably priced all the way up until today. But it meant that you could actually fully assemble like a little legion of these troop builder, army builder people. And normally Cobra does this a lot more because, again, they're kind of meant to be portrayed as this like bizarrely infinitely large legion of mostly faceless evil people. So you could literally like put together a good like 20 to 40 member army of these troop builder type people. To a certain extent, I think the principle has extended, or for a certain group of collectors, the idea of continuing to have, again, just a massive army of these guys translated over to the 6-inch line as well, which seems crazy to me, both from a space standpoint and also in terms of cost. But that's one of the things about this hobby, any kind of like toy collecting hobby, or especially certain types of action figure, is that the willingness of spending money on some people's parts for this, there's not really a limit. And a lot of people, they may have a lot more disposable income than you would anticipate. I'm sure for some people, the amount of disposable income that I have tossed into this stream might seem a little extreme or ridiculous, but I don't really think so. I mean, it's just all about where are you putting your money. I don't buy new video games every day or every month or even every 6 months. I might get a new video game like once a year. And so, like I said, you put your money where your interests are. You do what you want to do. The point being, there are still people that are definitely army building these guys, and I think the fact that, again, this character is what would be deemed as a pretty highly sought after character for the purposes of doing things like army building. But it was a Target exclusive. So, at least initially, I believe. So that meant perhaps a lucky few, or those that were willing to shell out, could still do their army building and buy legions of these guys. But even beyond just the fact that a regular price tag on these guys would be $20, in the aftermarket, I know for a fact that there were people selling them for, double that, $50, $70. I don't think you saw quite as much of scalping. That's the term for... Well, I don't need to explain scalping, do I? Everybody's familiar with like ticket scalping. But yeah, the aftermarket prices on this, they definitely got inflated, but I think that it was worse with other ones because people want to purchase many of these. like I said, this is my second Cobra Viper. I also do have 2 Cobra Troopers, but that's it. That's the only doubles that I've done, and I feel like having 2 of them is fine. You just have like a little symmetry. You can pose one on either side of some other named character as opposed to a faceless Legion. 2, I think, is probably my limit as far as the concept of troop building or army building. I know I talked a little bit about it when I was doing the Super 7 Ninja Turtles, because despite the ridiculous price, not ridiculous, but despite the much higher price tag of, say, like 50 a pop or so, people were still army building the foot soldiers from that line, which is even wilder to me than buying a couple Cobra Troopers or Vipers. But it's another one. I mean, as I've said, not really a review channel, so you'll pardon me for not gushing or going into specific detail about it, but I do continue to think that this is just like, you're getting a lot of accessories, nice sculpt detail. These are pretty well engineered. I would say, again, I'm of the opinion that Hasbro is maybe doing some of its best stuff now that it has in years, and they really only kind of seem to be getting better. I don't think they've really had a dud in this G.I. Joe line. And I say that as somebody that, again, I have currently every release. I don't think that I'm going to continue getting every release. As I mentioned earlier, this is sort of a promotional time for G.I. Joe, for Hasbro, who are the manufacturers of the current G.I. Joe line and the G.I. Joe lines in the past as well. But they did announce a lot of new stuff within the last, say, week or so. They showed a new Snake Eyes action figure that comes with his wolf, Timber. I'll probably get that. Like I said, I'm kind of, maybe I have basic tastes, but I like Wolverine. I like Snake Eyes. I like the obvious, dumb, popular boy choice characters for adolescents to like. So sue me. But all that to say, I'm probably going to buy that deluxe Snake Eyes. As a matter of fact, I think it's supposed to become available for order tomorrow. It's going to start off being on Amazon, but I think it's not a retailer exclusive. I could be totally wrong, honestly. I know one of the toy sites had kind of talked about it, but I haven't kept super great track. But I do want to pick up that. I don't think it's going to be as hard to get as certain other things. But then, like, they did start to talk about some other upcoming releases, and I think there's like some guy I don't know on a motorcycle, and I'm just like, nah, I won't pick that up. They showed Barbecue as well, who's like a guy that has like a flamethrower and has a very distinct look that I thought, because these are fairly like realistic-y, real-worldy interpretations of these characters in this line. And I was thinking, like, I don't know if maybe some of the more over-the-top characters they might take a lot of liberties with or not really capture in quite as extreme a way. But I would say, for the most part, they don't really seem to be shying away from things, despite some modernization and updates of certain character designs. That's another one that they had shown is interesting. I'm opening Zartan presently, who's like a leader of a motorcycle gang that's like a sub faction within Cobra. I mean, like I said, they kind of recruit whoever they can, anyone willing to work for them. I digress. I was talking about something else. What was it that I was talking about? Dang. I really did just like totally blank on that one. Well, I think I was talking about some of the new releases, right? So they announced that new Snake Eyes. They announced the new character with a vehicle. They promised that they were going to increase some availability of stock of some of these Cobra Island action figures. They also showed a 80s style roadblock, who I thought looked pretty cool. I ordered him as well. Kind of shows that they're probably going to end up doing like more classic 80s looks for these characters. I guess you could probably make the argument that the deluxe Snake Eyes with Timber that they're planning on releasing is sort of meant to be that, more of his classic look than the updates. But I tend to think that the updates and modernizations that they've done, I think they look fine. And like I mentioned, they certainly are not shying away from doing alternate versions of the characters. Or 80s versions, so they'll probably end up releasing slightly more faithful or 80s accurate interpretations of the characters in the future as well. All of that to be said, I think my original point was that I may not be a completionist with this line. I think that there's definitely some stuff that I'm not like dying to have coming up in the future. Honestly, like I might not pick up Barbecue. He's just not a character that I'm overly familiar with. Since my points of reference for this franchise, again, are bizarre and very incomplete. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I've really been enjoying collecting this, though. It has occasionally been a somewhat challenging toy line to collect for some of the reasons that I talked about. Certain high demand characters like Baroness only being available as a Target exclusive and having a lot of issues with regards to there being just enough stock or just being a hot target for scalpers to go after. It's been a fun line to collect, nonetheless. I have managed to, like I said, get every mainline release without paying an aftermarket price for it. And I think that just as toys, they're quite nice. So there's some subtle upgrades with this line that Hasbro's been doing in general. If you look at this Cobra Viper, if you look at the construction of his arm, for example, there at the elbow, you've got a joint, a double hinge joint. There's one at the top, one at the bottom. But this articulation that's sculpted into the toy is facilitated by these two pegs. Those two pegs, one above and one below the joint, give him the ability to have those elbows that have a pretty decent, range of articulation. Not a new thing. I mean, action figures, toys in general, they've had articulation forever. But normally there's a visual indication of most joints. Like you can't hide joints, or you can. And certain toy manufacturers go to great lengths to do that. You see it a lot with Japanese imports, but sometimes those are just kind of masking or engineered in a way where they can hide a ball joint that is, just mostly obscured by the character sculpt. American toys kind of have a different approach to articulation than Japanese toys. And like I said, there's usually a pretty strong visual indicator. I mean, think of your Toy Story movies, for example. This Zartan, who was a character I mentioned a few moments ago, the leader of that motorcycle club, he's also a master of disguise. I'll show you with some of his accessories. Yes, a real pistachio disguisey, and I've never seen that movie, so I'm just hopping on the meme bandwagon for people that are joking about that movie. All that being said, Zartan here, his articulation is done in a way where there are no visible pegs. Now that's both for his knees as well as his elbow joints. Other joints, of course, you can't really hide terribly well. Hasbro's kind of moving away from certain types of articulation because of, I don't know, I think they're just trying to do slightly more sophisticated engineering or present it as a little bit more of like a collector price point. Sort of like some of the higher end figures. I mean, I would say like the quality's kind of getting there. Most of the time, though, you're going to have like a bit more as far as paint applications than you would at most mass release toys like Hasbro, Mattel style toys. I mean, when you look at sort of the quality of those Super 7 Ninja Turtles, like I said, they come with a pretty hefty price tag, a little bit more than twice the cost of any of these G.I. Joe guys. But Hasbro really has, like, they've been doing some nice improvements. I think they did announce earlier this year that costs were going to be going up, but almost every toy manufacturer is dealing with that right now just because of cost of materials. But this is another nice looking toy and another good example of some of the improvements with regards to toy quality that Hasbro in particular happens to have going on. You have a few different types of finishes as far as some of the plastic here. Again, a nice realistic head sculpt, plenty of accessories and all of this kind of standard articulation that you would expect to see. You can reveal his ugly mug. And like I said, he's actually a master of disguise. So built in his backpack here, which has weird little like a mummified hand and a mummified rattlesnake head. Again, he's kind of like a swamp biker gang kind of dude. Well, inside of his backpack is one of those like Mission Impossible fake face mold injection kind of things. And you can actually take this off. And it's sculpted in such a way as it can clip onto the main character or the main toy's face in a, I guess, somewhat vaguely convincing fashion. Although those white eyes, you're not going to be fooling anybody with those white eyes, buddy. But yeah, a really, really solid figure. Not part of the Cobra Island imprint, so I think aside from demand, generally speaking, being high for these this toy line in general, he's been a little bit easier to acquire because you just have more retailers, especially now that you're able to get him from. I think I want to say that I had ordered my Zartan after missing some of the initial availability. I think I ordered mine off of Big Bad Toy Store, where I actually have a frightening number of pre-orders sitting, waiting to go into my pile of loot over there. But I digress once more. I think this is just another nice action figure, really cool, fun accessories that are included with him. Same great quality as far as like just sculpt and paint and all that good stuff. Again, it's not like your Super 7 Ninja Turtles where everything is like very clearly hand painted and things like that, but still a great figure. I think that they being Hasbro have really been kind of outshining a lot of the other manufacturers that operate at a 6-inch mass retail scale. Yep. But all that to say, pretty cool. So we've had 3 Cobra dudes, and I'm just going in order. All of these have a number. So there's been more or less about 26, I guess 26 releases in this line. And as I mentioned, I do have, I believe, pretty much everything. But we've been looking at a couple of Cobras, and why don't we take a look at one of the G.I. Joes themselves. This is Lady Jaye, and then we'll have one more toy to open after that. And that'll be her good buddy, Mr. Flint. Lady Jaye was one that I was passingly familiar from the cartoon. I mean, there was... I'm familiar somewhat with like the main cartoon cast because there was a lot of, I guess, bleed over into at least the first film of trying to recreate that main cast or core cast. I remember kind of tracking down a Lady Jaye when I was collecting the 3 3/4 inch line, because even though I wasn't like super familiar with the characters, I had wanted to try and put together some of that principal cast. But I do like Lady Jaye, just I think from a character design standpoint. See, taking her out of the box, I just I got confirmation of what I thought was sort of a strange design choice that I'll show you here in just a second. You know, she, aside from Scarlet, I would say she's probably your most well-known female G.I. Joe character. I would say she's probably, like, you know, if somebody said name 5 female G.I. Joe characters, I think people would probably be able to go Scarlet, Baroness, Lady Jaye. I think that would be your top 3. You might have people that know like Cover Girl or Agent Helix, but those are kind of deep cuts, to be perfectly honest. I say this as somebody that has gone on the record earlier in this stream of saying that I don't know those characters terribly well, but that only further goes to show who somebody that is mostly a casual fan would be able to identify. So I acted like I was proving myself wrong when really I was proving myself right. Way to go. Way to go. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like Lady Jaye's design. She, I guess, has what you might consider a fairly simplistic design. Again, especially in comparison to those other 2 more notable female characters that I mentioned. Baroness has a pretty famous look, and then I would say Scarlet also has a very famous look. Lady Jaye is a little bit different in that she kind of wears stuff that maybe looks a little bit more passably realistic. I think she and Flint kind of have that in common. This Lady Jaye action figure too is similar to Zartan in having the pinless joints. You can kind of see the pins on her ankles, but her knees and her elbows are done without pins. Same, I suppose, for her shoulders. But yeah, she has a little bit more of kind of a real world. I don't know what it's called, or I kind of do, but my mind just sort of went blank for a second. I forget what I was trying to say. Her little green jumpsuit, it's a little bit more like actual army, I don't know what it's called, uniform, like an army uniform, just kind of your basic green. So I can see why, from a visual standpoint, she certainly doesn't stand out in quite the same way as either Scarlet or Baroness. So it would make sense that she's maybe not as popular for that reason, has a little bit less name recognition for that reason. But again, I think she's still probably one of the more popular characters. And I like her. I don't really remember if they tried to put her in the movie or not. So this action figure is a little interesting because Lady Jaye also kind of has a famous look of wearing a ball cap or a baseball cap. So I was kind of curious as to how they were going to approach that. Sometimes they'll like just sculpt a hat that can fit over a character's hair. Sometimes, as we've discussed many times in the past, there'll be an alternate portrait, which is a completely separate head sculpt. that will come with the character. They haven't had, in the G.I. Joe line so far, they haven't had any figures that were packaged with an alternate head for classified. So I was wondering if they were planning on setting the precedent. Well, they did something that I didn't anticipate with regards to offering those two looks. They just made her hair a cap. I would say in the past, a lot of times it would be pretty noticeable. And I think it, on a lot of older toys, just didn't really look good. This one, I would say, it does a pretty good job as far as looking fairly unnoticeable. It's passable as just being like, whichever of the two hair pieces you decide to display her in, it'll look like that's the way that the head was initially sculpted to be displayed as anyway. I had to kind of fix one of her kind of sideburn hair wisp kind of things. I think her head sculpt is pretty cute. I think it looks maybe a little bit more severe on camera. But again, like all of the other G.I. Joes, she comes with a nice little collection of weaponry and whatnot. So I'll bring her back into frame here in just a second with some of her additional accessories on. So there you go. Nice, action-packed. Another just very solid figure. I know it's repetitive to say, but I just think overall they've done a really nice job with this toy line. I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure. She kind of has this one weird gun that has a big hole down the center. I don't really know what is intended with that. Like, is that just the design? There's this other mystery weapon. I don't know if it interacts with that gun in some way. It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like it's the right size. But yeah, a pretty novel approach with regards to giving her a hat on, hat off option. Another G.I. Joe, Gung Ho, from this line had a cap. But he's kind of, I mean, he's not quite bald, but he only has like a little mohawk. So it was easy to have it sculpted to where that could just sit on the head pretty flush to offer a hat on or a hat off look. I kind of like the hat a little bit more with this Lady Jaye. I might display her definitely with that cap on. But a pretty good variety as well. I mean, one of the things that I will say is a credit to G.I. Joe Classified. I'm sure there's some reuse of sculpts and parts. Like, I think part of Firefly is shared in common with the Beachhead figure that they've released. But there's been a lot of unique sculpting, which I guess is to be expected when a line is still fresh and new. But like, they've released 3 female action figures, Scarlet, Baroness, and Lady Jaye, and none of them have any pieces in common. I think, when you look at something like Marvel Legends, almost every female character is using the same body sculpt. Now, granted, I mean, the costuming is kind of different, but it's really kind of down to interpretation. You can certainly render some of the embellishments on the costumes. You could sculpt it. Somebody like or like the Marvel Select line by Diamond, it actually, like, it does that. You get a unique sculpt regardless of any similarities there may be to another character's costume. So right now the G.I. Joe line, I think, has a small advantage over Marvel Legends in that they're all getting a unique body sculpt for the most part. Like I said, I'm sure some of like the grunts or less important characters are getting some parts reusage, but nowhere near what you see with Marvel Legends. So again, I say that to their credit. I think that for the small degree of disappointment or tears shed or frustration that people might have experienced with the line, I think it's a fun line. I think it's worth collecting if you are at all interested. We're at our last one for the night. Obviously, by comparison to like your Nika toys, the packaging on these are a little bit easier to manage, but they're not meant to be those big collector's things that are hard to interact with. So it only makes sense that we've been able to get through these 5 a little bit more quickly. And also, perhaps I have a little bit less to say about G.I. Joe, aside from the fact that, yes, I find it fun. Yes, to a certain extent, I think there's uncomfortable themes involved with that fun IP. But again, I also think that wisely, all of the stuff that they've done with the franchise has been a little bit too smartly dumb to really become a thing where you start thinking about the weird, uncomfortable American propaganda that you're swallowing. Our last figure of tonight is Flint. Flint and Lady Jaye are, again, maybe your next most known characters. I have to say, I think they went pretty severe with this face sculpt. I think that there are people that maybe had some issues with their Duke of kind of giving him too particular of a likeness. There are certain features that are like strong features, whereas he's kind of normally a very generic looking person. I would say that was kind of true. Well, not quite. I would say Flint is kind of depicted as usually being kind of a pretty boy, I would say, like, or handsome, dashing. That's my recollection of the character. I just think that some of the face sculpt is a little extreme on this guy, or it's just, again, where it just feels like it's meant to be a very particular likeness of someone, but you just happen to not know who that person is. I kind of, to a certain extent, think it kind of looks like my cousin, because sometimes he'll wear his hair like that as well. Or he's worn it like that in the past. Let's zoom in a little bit. I guess I could have done that to get a closer look at some of these other guys. Maybe I will before I'm done. I'll give you a little bit of another close-up. I just know that some people don't care for the fact that I'm always messing with this camera, but until I have a different camera, this is going to be an element of Matt Opens Toys. Matt messes with his camera incessantly while talking about nothing. But yeah, I just feel, again, like it just feels like such a very specific likeness. Like not a celebrity or anything like that. It's just like, looks like one specific person. Which I guess you could say is a credit to the sculpt. But if, like, for any reason you didn't think of this character as looking like this, then maybe the fact that it's such a particular likeness would be off-putting if it's just kind of not what you had in mind, right? He's got that shaved sides and back of his hair, but he also comes with this beret, which I think is pretty common in terms of most depictions of Flint. As I mentioned, I have a strong suspicion that they're going to end up doing more classic or faithful interpretations of these characters. So you'll probably end up seeing a bit of a simplified, less modernized, and less particularly licensed. Thanks. Thank you for the camera compliment. But I think you're going to end up just seeing like multiple versions of these characters. Because I think, for one, there will be interest in it. And then also there is just a lot of different versions of these characters. A lot of different toys that have been made of them over the years and things like that. I will say I think the likeness is a little extreme as I've said. But I do think it's a little bit more passable with the beret on. Like I said, maybe some of it is that I think he's usually depicted as a bit of a pretty boy, and I don't know, his nose seems a little stronger, a little broader here. It's a bigger feature. And I just tend to think of him as having slightly more refined, delicate features in a way. I don't know why I have that opinion. I'm just trying to picture the cartoon Flint, and I just feel like he was always kind of a little bit of a pretty boy. As somebody that doesn't have a lot of very strong memories of that, or has even watched very much of that show, I'm probably very wrong. And again, if you're somebody that's a diehard G.I. Joe fan watching this after the fact, well, I'm sorry. I just know what I know, and the ways that I've interacted with this franchise in the past. Yeah, just again, just the specificity of the likeness, I think, is a little. It's hard. I mean, I got used to their depiction of Duke. I liked their Scarlet quite a bit. I don't know. It's fine. I think there is a little bit of like subtle shading on some of the features too, which I guess is just to make them look a little bit more alive and whatnot. But I think it can sometimes have an effect of amplifying parts of the sculpt that I find a little bit questionable. But overall, another fine entry in this series of toys. I honestly think they've all been great. It's kind of a shame I don't have a great display space for my G.I. Joes. I have a few right now above and to the left of me on a shelf I have mounted on my wall. There's some Joes and a few Cobra members as well. But unlike, I have a nice dedicated display space for some of my X-Men Marvel Legends and the X-Men Villain Marvel Legends, and then all of my NECA cartoon turtles are displayed all together. Those are nice little display spaces. As much as I've been collecting this entire series, I don't know. I haven't dedicated quite as much space, and I don't know if I'm going to have a good dedicated display space for the G.I. Joe stuff. It's so tricky sometimes just to choose what you want to display and what you really want to have out and where you want it to go. And like I said, although I love the toys, I love buying the toys, I've been a completionist so far with this line. A lot of my relationship to them is only as toys, and so it makes me a little bit less inclined to display them prominently. I have no reservations about putting a nice X-Men team display up, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But with G.I. Joe, it's like I said, my points of entry and my points of reference for the show are so narrow and specific that it's almost like you don't want to display it because you don't want someone that's like a big G.I. Joe fan to come in and be all like, oh yeah, that, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about that? And I'm like, it's a cool toy, buddy. That's not like, I wouldn't not display them for that reason, but I think that's one of the reasons why I don't have them as prominently displayed as other things. So we're going to do a few close-ups of some of the toys as ostensibly I'm wrapping up. I think I had an all-time low for viewership, so I hope anybody that's watching this after the fact on video on demand is enjoying the fact that I was able to talk this whole hour about nothing, about how little I know about G.I. Joe. Here's some nice close-up shots of these guys that I already opened earlier in the stream. I think I had already given a nice close-up shot of Zartan, but he looks pretty good. It's the faceless Cobra Viper. And then last but not least, of course, Lady Jaye. But as promised in the description of this stream, I opened some toys. So I opened these 5 G.I. Joe classified toys. My wife apologizes for ruining the stream by coughing so loud. Yeah, you can hear a fair amount. I don't know. I don't think I've quite mastered this microphone in the same way that I haven't really obviously mastered this camera either. So, some things are still going to be a work in progress. Oops. Well. So until I find a good spot to display these guys, it will probably go with some of my other G.I. Joes in terms of just not currently being displayed. Sorry. But big fan of the line. I hope, I hope more people get an opportunity to collect this line. I think it's a fun line. I think Hasbro's really been killing it with this G.I. Joe classified. But yeah, that's all the opening we got tonight. I opened 5. I think I just saw another viewer join. Obviously, I'm wrapping up. Sorry, second viewer. But it'll be available on VOD if you want to hear my sparkling commentary with regards to G.I. Joe and how it's a very smart franchise for being as stupid as it is so that you don't think about the American war machine. And on that uplifting note, thank you all so much for tuning in and watching this on demand. I'm still enjoying it, still having fun, and I hope everybody that joins me has a good time as well. All right. Thanks so much, and I'll see y'all the next time that I decide to stream probably my Daily Bugle build that's taking forever. But bye. This has been Matt on Matt Opens Toys.